Among the many legendary stories of King David, one stands out above the rest: his confrontation with the terrifying Philistine giant, Goliath. This moment echoes through the centuries, marking the young shepherd's rise to power and Israel's victory over its enemies. But what if I told you there's more to this tale than we've been taught? Goliath's defeat was just the beginning, and what followed was even more shocking. There were other giants, other warriors, descendants of the same terrifying Nephilim lineage. Among them was Goliath's own brother, a colossal being who nearly killed David in a moment of peril. Stick with me as we dive deeper into this hidden chapter of the Bible. The story of David is one of the most remarkable in the Bible. David wasn't born a king, and in fact he was never supposed to be one. He was just a young shepherd from the tribe of Judah, the youngest son of Jesse, an ordinary man in an ordinary family. Yet against all odds, David was anointed by God to become Israel's king, replacing Saul, whose reign had been destroyed by his disobedience to God. David's rise wasn't just marked by his talents as a poet and musician. The young shepherd became a legendary warrior, and his first battle, the one we all know, was against the formidable Goliath. As a boy between 15 and 17 years old, David had no formal military training, and yet he stood before Goliath, a giant that terrified the entire Israeli army, with nothing but a sling and 5 smooth stones. This moment, this incredible victory, shaped the trajectory of David's life and the future of Israel. But Goliath wasn't just any warrior. His enormous height, standing between 9 and 10 feet tall, and his unmatched strength made him an almost invincible foe. What made him even more terrifying was his connection to a mysterious and ancient race of giants, the Rephaim. Goliath was not alone. He was part of a larger, darker lineage of giants who descended from the Nephilim, the offspring of fallen angels and human women. The giants were not merely warriors, they were part of an ancient and supernatural legacy. These beings are believed to have emerged after the flood, as a result of a forbidden union between fallen angels, the Bene Elohim, and human women. The giants were born with extraordinary strength, size, and often an unsettling supernatural ability. The word Nephilim itself is shrouded in mystery, often translated as fallen ones or giants, but also hinting at a darker spiritual connection to the ancient world. Goliath's defeat was more than a personal victory. It was part of a larger spiritual battle between Israel and these ancient beings. The giants weren't just warlords or mercenaries. They were revered by other nations, especially the Philistines, who viewed them as deities, superior beings with supernatural power. The existence of these giants wasn't limited to Goliath. They were part of a much larger, deeply rooted conflict that continued long after Goliath's death. What few realize is that Goliath was not the only giant to pose a threat to Israel. Goliath had brothers, other terrifying warriors who continued to challenge Israel's survival, even after their brother's death. One of these brothers, Isb Benob, sought vengeance after Goliath's defeat. Isb Benob was no mere soldier. He descended from the same lineage of giants, and he was as fearsome as his brother. Armed with a massive bronze spear, weighing about 13 pounds, and a newly forged sword, Isb Benob set his sights on David himself. Years had passed since David's victory over Goliath. Now an older man, David had led Israel through countless battles. However, the weight of age and the toll of years of war had taken their toll. In the midst of a fierce battle with the Philistines, David found himself face to face with Isb Benob, a giant who was determined to end his life. At this critical moment, David was vulnerable. His strength was nearly gone. Isb Benob advanced, and it seemed as though nothing could save the king from certain death. But then, in a moment of incredible courage, David's nephew, Abishai, stepped forward. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, was no stranger to battle. When he saw the peril David was in, he didn't hesitate. With one swift strike, Abishai killed Isb Benob, saving the life of his king and uncle. This moment was a turning point in Israel's military strategy. David's soldiers realized that their king, though still an inspiring figure, could no longer fight on the front lines. They made a vow. David would never again risk his life in battle. But this was far from the last encounter with the giants. As the years passed, more giants continued to challenge Israel's army, each one determined to avenge their fallen brethren. Goliath's brothers weren't the only ones. There was another giant, Saph, who was killed in a later battle. And then there was another formidable warrior in Gob, Goliath the Gittite, who also fell at the hands of Israel's warriors. Yet another battle took place at Gath, where a giant with 6 fingers on each hand and foot was slain by Jonathan, David's nephew. Each of these giants represented not just physical threats, but a spiritual war that Israel was fighting on behalf of God's covenant. The presence of these giants was a constant reminder of Israel's spiritual battle. The giants were not mere physical opponents. They represented something much darker, forces that had once existed before the flood and were now resurfacing to challenge the people of God. The giants weren't just mercenaries, and they weren't simply warriors. They were part of a deeper spiritual conflict, a war that Israel had to fight not just with swords and shields, but with faith and courage. Each battle fought against the giants marked a victory for Israel, not because of their physical strength, but because of their unwavering trust in God. As Goliath's brothers fell one by one, the giant's reign began to crumble. It was clear that it wasn't the size of the giants that mattered. It was the power of God that determined the outcome. So, what does all of this mean? The story of David and Goliath is far from over. It's not just a story of one victory over a giant. It's a chapter in a much larger, much more complex history. Goliath's brothers and their descendants continued to challenge Israel, but in the end, it was the courage, faith, and intervention of God's people that led them to victory. Who were these giants really? And what was their true origin? The answers to these questions remain shrouded in mystery. But one thing is certain. The battle against these ancient beings was far more than a fight for land. It was a fight for the soul of Israel. Stay tuned, because we'll be diving deeper into the mystery of the Rephaim and their continued impact on biblical history. You won't want to miss it. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.